Hey again. I'm not sure if I'm ever gonna get used to how quickly a month goes by, but what else? It just means that it's time for our second installment of the species of Saorsa. Now, as you may recall, assuming you watched the video, last week we covered the Kara and dragons. Whew, tough acts to follow those. So who's our next lucky contestant? Who could stand up to a dragon? Like, seriously, who would be willing to punch a dragon in the snout? I sure as hell wouldn't. Ferax, however, would. Loosely based upon hyenas, these apex predators are loud, eccentric, and filled with life. Their culture is a bit odd in that it's excessively fractured compared to most other species. In the case of humans, yeah, we divide ourselves up into countries and so on, but the Ferax have a thing where they quite vehemently are of the belief that like should be with like. But not by race, not by age, not by really most of what you'd expect, but by personality and belief, by value. The Ferax honestly don't care if you're one of their species. So long as you hold similar beliefs to them, you'll fit in just fine. So, how'd they wind up in this kind of a situation where every town is heavily specialized and populated by those of similar mindset, where just a few kilometers away, the mindset can be almost alien the next town over? Well, this goes back to the savanna-style landscape the Ferax evolved upon. Large areas without water or nutrition led to a nomadic lifestyle for most of their civilization's history. Survival skills weren't just required, but also required to be put to the test. Almost every individual in a tribe would need to be able to lead the others to safety, or they to find themselves lost or low on resources. These tribes had to be capable of splintering off from one another, branching out into smaller groups and reforming as need be, as a means of survival. This eventually grew into a coming-of-age ceremony, a tradition for all the females of their tribes, the rebirth pilgrimage. As Feraxian females are substantially larger, stronger, and a lot more aggressive than their male counterparts on average, this rebirth pilgrimage was to ensure that the females of their tribes would be fit for leadership and command. A young girl, upon earning her third name, would head out into the savannah upon her own to show her capacity for survival on her own, and to travel between the various nomadic tribes of the Ferax. Each tribe established its own unique personality of sorts, and it would be her duty to track down each of them in turn, to gather information on their whereabouts, and to temporarily become part of their tribe, to learn who they are, and at the end of her pilgrimage, to decide which most suited her, where she fit in best, and to join that tribe. And so, the tradition has continued for thousands of years, even into the modern era. Upon the Ferax homeworld, they've progressed to a level of technology a bit beyond where our current 21st century tech has brought us. Not by too much, 30 to 50 years kind of deal. These traditions have shifted a bit over the years, such as males now being encouraged to partake in the rebirth pilgrimage as well, but the basic concept remains largely the same. The young head out into the world and travel, often for months or years, to discover who they are and where their place may be in the various cultures. Once the individual has found their place, where they belong, they can settle down. The pilgrimage itself largely involves going from town to town and engaging in what are essentially pub crawls. Alcohol and wild, gibbering laughter fill their halls, and stories of the local culture are offered up, among with guidance. It's a firmly embedded tradition to offer food and ale to the young pilgrims, along with tales of glory and history, a well-rounded education of the neighboring locales, and a continual trade of the up-and-coming younger generation leads to a surprisingly low-conflict society for the Ferax. Well, alright, relatively low-scale conflict may be a better term for it. Bar fights are practically a standard of living, and it's common for the young Ferax to learn a wide range of brawling styles just from their pilgrimage alone. Physically, the Ferax are large and intimidating to most other species, with even the smaller males weighing in at about 6.5 feet on the low end, while it's not uncommon for an adult female Feraxian to reach well over 7 feet in height. Gigantism is particularly common within the Feraxian gene pool, and it's barely even uncommon for an individual to reach upwards of 10 feet in height. One more thing of note is that the Ferax technically have 3 sexes. The males are split relatively evenly between the spotted and striped offshoots, with both required for children to be born. The larger females possess traits of both, and after mating, the males are the ones to carry the eggs internally until nearly ready to hatch, which is a large part of why the females are more aggressive. They're essentially the more expendable of the two, oddly enough, and are required to care for, guard, and protect the smaller males who bear their young. Despite their great size, the Ferax are hardly lacking in finesse. The broad arc their fingers can swing in, and the exceptionally precise musculature within such, allow for even relatively clumsy Ferax to possess a dexterity to their motions on par with the finest of clockmakers and jewelers. The larger issue is that the Ferax tend to be quite physical in their playfulness, and occasionally forget that a rough slap on the back as a joke to them can send some smaller species sailing across the room into a wall. There are many cultural differences between the Ferax and most other species, but one of the most notable is their tracking of an individual's age. Unlike most species, one's physical age is of minimal relevance to the Ferax. An individual is given respect and power based more upon their deeds. To a degree, survival itself is considered a deed worthy of praise, but it's by far not the only measure. Every 8 years of physical age, a Feraxian is given a new name to add on to her total. These names are befitting of her deeds, marking her quality as an individual. For each exceptional deed committed as well, she's given yet another name, and adulthood is reached after one's third name is granted. Females are given a name upon birth, while males must wait until their first major deed or their 8th year of birth to earn their first true name. This is done partially to make it more fair for males to compete against their larger and more aggressive sisters, but also for those who show inklings of greatness. Being one name short is not enough to slow them down, often pressing those same males to work harder and even more aggressively in pursuit of their life's goals. Truly, the majority of so-called Feraxian elders are rarely beyond 30 years of age in total when they first gain the title, though each has had a life packed to the brim with intense experience and great deeds, marking them with an elder status by action, far more than age. Those of the Ferax who are drawn to Saorsa are like all other species, in that their capacity to recall important details about advanced technology seems to be just on the edge of their memory, yet just out of reach, stranded at a medieval level of technology for the duration of their stay, however long that may take. What's more of interest upon Saorsa, however, is that the Ferax have come to consider it almost a second homeworld to themselves, eagerly embracing the concept of the world and all it stands for, feeling it to be much akin to their own rebirth pilgrimage. Truly, though Feraxians were one of the later species to be brought to Saorsa, their numbers have swelled dramatically, making them the single most populous of all species, with most towns having a substantial Feraxian presence. While their numbers are partially due to their quite emotional outbursts, which can lead them far enough astray to lose sight of themselves, it's also due in large part to many desiring to remain behind. Many Ferax intentionally opt to remain upon Saorsa even after they have the option to return home, considering it their proper place to be. True to their nomadic heritage, the Ferax bring their home with them, for home is where the heart is, and their hearts are both physically and metaphorically quite large, showing intense passion in all that they do. In terms of the physical capabilities of the Ferax within the game's rules, this large species possesses an enormous jaw strength, yet amazingly fine-tuned motor control, exceptional senses of both smell and taste, as well as a remarkable immune system, can make it nearly impossible to poison a Feraxian, with not just an imposing physical stature, but also powerful leg muscles, and a natural inclination towards a firmly established stance to brace against powerful winds on their homeworld. Attempting to budge a Feraxian from where she's standing, if she doesn't want you to, is largely an exercise of futility. If she decides to move you, however, the same could not be said, as they're more than willing to throw their weight around. And they are packing an awful lot of weight. And it's not fat. Being both stubborn and excessively competitive, the Ferax are highly resistant to mind-altering effects, as well as being able to steel themselves to the point of forcing a successful roll of their choice once per scene. In the end, the Ferax are a larger-than-life people, intensely passionate in all that they do, and always looking for a chance to prove themselves, or better themselves. Though their birth families mean little to them, once they've decided that someone is true family to them, that bond is near unshakable, and they can be some of the most fervent allies to have by your side. And who, after the Ferax, could possibly come next? Why, the humans, of course. Terra itself is only a single world of many which harbor humans, though it is their homeworld. These Terrans aren't the strongest in total, nor the smartest of species upon Saorsa, but they are far from lacking by any means. One of the most versatile of all species, humans have found their capacity to adapt to almost any circumstance or location to be of immense value. Of particular note is a human's stamina and capacity for endurance, a predatory species with exceptionally efficient locomotion. Though Humans aren't exceptionally fast. They can simply wear down prey with their relentless pursuit. Give a human so much as a flask of water, and they can pursue prey for hours on end, something which virtually no other species can even come close to matching. That same tenacity carries through to the personality of humans as a whole. Rarely will they give in or give up. This can lead to issues with other species when bargaining with humans in general, and most other species flat out refuse to even attempt engaging humans in a war of attrition. In fact, what's often been quoted as the greatest strength of humanity of all is the endless and insatiable need for more. Whether it's better living conditions, a closer devotion to their faith, more knowledge, more understanding, or more power. The fact of the matter is that the idea of good enough is a misnomer to humans in general, and they'll always eventually grow dissatisfied with what they have. And that inability to be satisfied pushes them ever onward to seek out bigger and better things, no matter how good they have it. The capacity for humans to often remain calm, almost in a serene state during a crisis, and their stubborn streak and unyielding desire to improve their position in life has earned humanity a certain status unique among the species which have been drawn to Saorsa. Lesser known of humans, however, is their exceptional immune system. More than once has an assassination failed when a human was given a dose strong enough to kill 3 dragons outright, and yet the human merely grows intensely ill for some time, only to make a full recovery a few weeks later. Another commonly unknown trait of humans is their exceptional vision, and in particular, the vertical tracking and ability to model predictions of trajectories within their heads, making humans some of the keenest archers in existence. Also, despite not being physically intimidating compared to many other species upon Saorsa, the human body is an impressive weapon when honed, able to strike with punches, kicks, and even a vicious bite, which can be quite unexpected. As for the nature of humanity's culture, such is as broad and varied as the stars themselves, though the bulk of humanity drawn to Saorsa are from the European locale of the Middle Ages. Even so, humans have been drawn from all over the galaxy, having branched out many times over. Humans can be found on hundreds of worlds, though frequently they're called Terrans, regardless of their point of origin. Frequently these humans change in subtle ways to become more suited to their new environments. Elves, dwarves, orcs, gnomes, trolls. These are but a few subspecies of human which are hardly removed from humanity's gene pool. Though many Terrans believe these creatures to be completely foreign and alien creatures, often even deemed to be monsters, in practical terms, these subspecies are still so similar genetically to the original humans of Terra, indeed being able to still procreate with their not quite so distant ancestors, as to be considered human by practically any other species other than humans themselves. When the first Terrans in particular were brought to Saorsa, what greeted them was a choir of angels, and most immediately embraced the path to redemption as a way to atone for their sins. The Assyrians were not about to correct the mistaken identity, though they did begin intentionally picking, using candidates from areas more likely to hold faiths, which would make them easier to guide down that same path to redemption, thus reinforcing the belief of the whole angel thing becoming cyclical in nature. Where many species resented the Assyrians, and indeed the concept of Saorsa as a whole, humanity as a whole flocked to the idea and flourished under the concept to such an extent that many humans remained behind even after having completed their trials, typically in order to aid with the purpose of Saorsa itself, some even being elevated and enhanced, at least by the views of those relevant parties, into Assyrians themselves. To the minds of humans, this ascension into divinity is often considered the ideal goal to pursue. For many other species upon Saorsa, it's considered to be humanity's greatest failing, to fall to servitude to their oppressors by being unable to see them as they are. Regardless of how or why, one thing is known: humanity has a large part to play in the events of Saorsa, though the specifics of what that role shall entail have yet to be revealed. And so ends the reveal of the next two races of Saorsa. And with that, I'm out. I'll see you next time.